Hey everyone, welcome back to Pretending with Dice. As always, I'm your host and game master, AJ. I know we've been kind of keeping the intros fairly casual as we've been running these one-shot stories for the past couple of episodes, but I did just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for tuning in and listening to us for these past 3 years. This week was the 3rd anniversary of the release of our first episode. I just can't believe how quickly the time's flown by. Your support means so much to all of us here on the podcast, and we all hope you'll stick with us for what's still to come. Obviously, last year we did our big 2-year anniversary Q&A episode, taking your questions and whatnot. I'm not going to lie, the anniversary kind of snuck up on me this year, and by the time I realised I didn't really have time to kind of organise anything similar. Of course, this isn't really helped by the whole social distancing thing, as it's kind of tricky to get a bunch of us in one room together right now. I'm thinking what we'll most likely try and do is get out a Q&A episode again a little later on in the year if restrictions are eased to the point where we can get together. So watch this space for news on that. We'll definitely be asking for your questions and comments and whatnot when we do. Of course, if you ever have anything to say at any point, questions or whatnot, you can always get in touch with us on our social media pages on Twitter and Facebook, both of which we are at Pretend with Dice. Right then, all that said, let's recap what happened in our last episode. In the dwarven town of Shalefast, within the pub known as the Fantastic Squeeze Box, we met wandering adventurer Ruby and the pub's landlord and ex-rogue Meg. They were soon engaged by a man named Jackson Black, a young aspiring member of the Explorers Guild, to join him on an expedition to climb the highest summit in the Drakeseat Mountains, the Winged Peak. After setting out, it soon became clear that Jackson had no clue what he was doing and had most likely spent most of his life in comfortable luxury. Determined to make his name though, and not too proud to accept the advice of Meg and Ruby, the group soldiered on, bringing with them a young half-elf named Nairn from Shalefast to attend to Jackson's horse. Leaving the safety of the trade road through the mountains on the second day of their trip, it wasn't long before they stumbled across the camp of a small gang of bandits. A fight ensued, and the group managed to quickly put pay to the bandits, with the single survivor pleading with them to spare him in exchange for a promise to change his ways. Sending the wounded, now ex-bandit, back to the road with Nairn and the horse, the trio set off to continue their journey. That's pretty much where we left off last time, so without any further ado, let's begin today's episode. Enjoy. So, after spending a little time catching your breath after your fight with the bandits, you gather your packs and possessions and turn to continue your long trudge up the valley, catching one last glimpse of Nairn leading the injured prisoner and Jackson's horse Whisper back the way you had come towards the trade road. The higher up the valley you go, the more that you notice that the winds are definitely kind of picking up, and they've got a bit more of a kind of chilling bite to them than they did at the sort of lower altitudes. It's not painful yet, but it's definitely a lot more uncomfortable, should we say. It's getting on in the afternoon, towards evening, when you crest the final ridge of the valley that you're in and get your first good look at the Winged Peak itself. Still a few miles away, but it's rising ominously ahead of you, its summit currently shrouded in some low clouds. Jackson sort of blows out a sort of, whew, there it is. Look at it.
I'm suddenly thinking of just how big a mountain that is.
Okay.
I'm thinking we set camp and do it in the morning.
It's pretty big. I mean, you're quite high up anyway. You're kind of up in the range, if that makes sense. So it's not like you're kind of at sea level and you're looking up at like a massive, sort of mountain from there, but it is pretty big. It's the tallest one in the mountain range. But yeah, it's pretty high. It's definitely kind of a lot higher than you're at the moment down in these valleys. But yeah, you're a fair way above sea level yourself, but it's definitely going to be possibly a treacherous climb. So what are you thinking? Do you said maybe set a camp in the morning? What's the thought? I'd say it's maybe about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon at the moment.
Okay, well maybe we could get a few more hours in and then set up camp at a reasonable spot.
Yeah.
Yes, we set up a base camp. That was all of the legendary adventurers whose books I've read. All have a sort of home base where they make their assaults on the peaks and such.
But usually they've got 5 or 6 more people, and there's only the 3 of us. So
well,
we kind of have to carry all our stuff.
Yes, but I've read their books. I have all their knowledge. It should be fine.
Ruby looks over at Meg.
I'm gonna still take my stuff.
Yep. Oh,
Our experience should count for something. How many mountains have you actually climbed? None, I presume.
This will be the first, and what I want to start on.
Then take it from experience. It's better to go with experience than most things in a book.
Oh, have you climbed a mountain before, then, Meg?
Many. Yeah. Filled with large goats at one point. It's a terrible story.
Should we be expecting some large goats on this one? Then I've never heard of that in the books I've read. But
so they can't know everything about mountains.
Well, quite clearly. Good thing I brought you along. First-hand knowledge and all that.
Exactly. So take my word, we'll be taking all our stuff.
Well, yes, I wouldn't want to leave any of this behind.
If we do another 2 to 3 hours, then set up camp. We will want to get a good amount of sleep before progressing any higher.
Yes, well, that all sounds good to me. Yes. Onward. Sooner we get there, sooner we can set up camp and have some food and prepare ourselves for the adventure ahead of us.
Yeah.
That's the plan, Jackson.
So so heading down the ridge, then you sort of make your way towards the mountain. As I say, it's still a couple of miles distant from where you were, and a couple of hours later, you arrive on a sort of not like a plateau, but like a kind of, I don't want to say convenient because it sounds like I'm just saying oh, how convenient, you found a neat spot to stop. But you kind of have found you found a little kind of sheltered nook that you can set up camp and hopefully strike out from in the morning. And looking up, the clouds are clearing a little bit as the evening is wearing on, and you get your sort of first proper look up towards the summit. It's really high above you, but you can finally see what kind of gives the peak its name. Is that the actual summit itself has almost looks like a kind of split in it, and the way that the rocks have sort of formed around this split, it almost looks like a kind of pair of kind of folded in wings with a slight kind of gap at the top, if that makes sense. It's possibly where the peak has gotten its name from. Think of the mountain with Satan on the top of it at the end of Fantasia, kind of. This isn't ominous foreshadowing. I'm just trying to think of the. So as you dump your packs, Jackson's sort of standing there looking at it, up at it, and yes, there it is. So, getting a fire started, I take it?
Yes.
It's pretty chilly up here, actually. You're not up in sort of frostbite territory, but it's pretty. You're quite high up now. Really, you're definitely higher up than you were at Shalefast and where you camped last night and everything. So you are, a fire is probably going to be a bit of a necessity here.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. A good fire, so we can be as well rested as possible before attempting the. And Ruby looks up at the peak, silently wondering to herself, "That's not an actual dragon. I hope this could be interesting." Well.
From the size of it, it would have to be, it would be a dragon. If it was a dragon on the peak, it would be, several hundred feet across and everything, It definitely looks like rock from where you are.
That is reassuring.
Jackson, can we have a look at your map so we can see the best way to approach this?
Quite, yes. Well, he rummages through his pack, pulls out the map. It's not as detailed as you would maybe hope. It's not like a sort of fully kind of like laying out kind of sort of geographical survey map or anything like that.
I'm kind of looking for like landmarks to see if they match up with this one, and just to give me like a perspective of like the map versus reality from our view, and just be like, right, so that could be here, kind of thing.
Okay, I feel like there's probably a check we can make for this. I mean, I could fold that into like a survival check, because survival is generally like tracking and kind of sort of knowing where you are and foraging and stuff. Mm-hmm. So yeah, give me a survival check if you could for that.
Okay, I have nothing in survival, so I will just roll a natural 20. 14.
That's not bad. Okay, yeah, I mean, you kind of look around. You know what valley you came up. You weren't just sort of stumbling blindly through the mountains hoping that you got here. You had a good idea of the route you were taking, and you're able to sort of lay out, get a good layout of where you are. You are still very much kind of what you would consider like the base of the mountain, if that makes sense. But you can definitely see a couple of different routes you could possibly take to get up the mountain itself. There's a couple of sort of ridge lines in different sort of with different kind of levels of shelter on them, really. And again, as I say, the map itself isn't really, it doesn't have like much in the way of kind of like, okay, here's 100-foot steep thing, or this is a quite shallow climb or anything. It's got a lot of the ridges and things kind of sketched in, but you get the idea that whoever made the map maybe didn't climb it themselves. They were maybe, if anything, working off of like what it would look like from a distance, and the higher up it goes, the more fuzzy the details are on the map. If that makes sense.
Yeah, Meg's noticing this, going, I'm going to share this knowledge with Ruby. This map's not that great.
Well, it was the best I could find, I'm afraid. Yes.
Did your book tell you which approach that some of these previous explorers took?
Well, actually, none of the books I read were by people who'd climbed this mountain. As I said, we'd be the first in 200 years to have done it. And even before that, most of those who did were members of the Order of the Dragon Slayers, and they were a bit tight-lipped when it came to divulging their secrets. Not a particularly high literary output, shall we say? Yes, nobody really knows what happened to them, but they didn't
Dragon
leave too many
Slayers.
journals. Yes, the Dragon Slayers. Have you not heard of them?
Oh no, I've heard of them.
You sure? You don't sound very confident in that.
Nope.
You can roll a history check if you want to.
No, she's exaggerated. She's just like, Dragon Slayers. Great.
Dragon Slayers. And that mountain looks awfully like a dragon.
That's
And some of them didn't come back.
By all accounts, none of them came back.
If the stories I've heard are to be believed, then the Dragon Slayers used to climb all the mountains in this range, as their name implies, hunting down the dragons who were sort of a scourge on this land in centuries past. And I suppose if there weren't any dragons left, they wouldn't have any need to climb the mountains. But as I say, they didn't exactly leave their own history in written form for people to read. It was mostly they were a very secretive order.
And it was some time ago at this.
Oh yes, as I say, 200 years ago or roundabouts. be sure that there's probably some elves or somebody who was around at that time, but so suffice to say, I'm not quite that old myself.
I wonder, which of these approaches do you think we should try in the morning?
You can see him sort of looking at the map, which I think you're just kind of pointing at a couple of different.
Yes, and gesturing to. So this one looks hopeful, but we might end up with a very steep climb near the end. This one looks like challenging throughout, but viable. What do you think?
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. I mean, do you not think it would maybe do us good to hold on to as much energy as we could, and for a possible final burst of strength to the finish?
Oh yes, that's certainly a good strategy.
Yes, well, but perhaps we would try the first of them then.
As you wish.
Right, well, quite. Well, I don't know about you, but I am famished. So, yeah, you see him kind of rummaging around in his pack, and he pulls out a sort of, wrapped in paper, a sort of package, and he sort of, see him break it open, and there's some sort of, you're not quite sure what it is, but it looks like a sort of, almost like a kind of sticky toffee cake, if that makes sense. He breaks off a piece of it and eats it. Yes, that is the spot. After a day of hiking and the battling we had earlier. He offers you a piece.
Thanks.
My mother's recipe.
Is it any good?
Yeah. Well, it's like a quite thick cake, basically. It's quite sweet.
In real life, I like sticky toffee pudding is like my favourite dessert.
It's like similar sort of.
It's like, yay, Meg. I'm not sure.
Meg living in Shelfast, not. Has she gotten used to dwarven cooking, do you think? A lot of meats
Probably.
And breads and things.
Yeah, she's not really a fussy eater, really. She'll eat what she's giving as long as, like, it's not actual people kind of thing.
Well, we are climbing a mountain. Not saying there's going to be cannibalism involved, but who knows what kind of weather blowing. I probably shouldn't be saying this kind of stuff.
It's a survival situation.
Yeah, you never know. But yeah, no, it tastes pretty good. As I say, quite sweet.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Very nice.
He kind of wraps it back up because, well, we'll save the rest for, well, when we, as a celebration, when we reach the top or make it back down again.
You would definitely have earned it.
Indeed.
Oh, yeah.
Ruby would quite like to be sorting out, like, an actual meal for people.
Sure.
And they're quite good at finding things in the wild.
Okay.
Going to go and scavenge.
Go for a bit of a scavenge. Yeah. Okay. Can I get a survival check from you then, please? So 14. Okay. Yeah. Again, you spend let's say the better part of half an hour, 45 minutes, having a bit of a scout around the kind of immediate area. There's not any trees up at this level, but there's some sort of brushes and scrubs and things, and managed to find some berries and things. But then you also come across you actually managed to get the drop on. Looks like a kind of, well, it's a relative of it's like a rabbit kind of thing. Would you like to hunt the rabbit, or?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. You got the 14, so I'll give you advantage on the shot, shall we say? I take it you're shooting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So can I get attack roll? It's
18.
18. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Pretty skillfully, you managed to. The rabbit never knows what's hit it, and it's quite large. You'd be able to get a decent amount of meat off of it. And so you return to camp with the berries and your quarry in hand. By this point, the fire is kind of nice and warm, and you can see Jackson's got his bedroll and everything out. He's not in it. He's not like fallen asleep or anything. But yeah, he's sort of sitting there warming his hands as well. Again, looks up as you go in. Returned. Excellent.
Yes, and we should be able to have some more food as well. And
Awesome.
Then I sit down and begin to slowly skin and butcher my prey.
I will get a pot going with some stock and some veggies. I have cheese in my bag.
Cheese. Oh,
You want a
excellent.
bit of cheese?
Yes, that'll be lovely.
I'm going
Thank
to I'll just take out a block of cheese.
Not gonna lie, out of character, I would totally sit around a fire and just eat cheese.
I have cheese in my fridge, actually.
Okay, so I don't think we need to sit here and make rolls about how good dinner is, really, or anything. Suffice to say, at the evening, you managed to between the group, you put together a hearty last meal before the climb begins. So, what order will we like to take watches?
Again, I should probably take the middle when it's...
Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense. Like you say, you've got dark vision.
I'm quite happy to take the first watch.
Yeah, okay, alright. So by the time the other two kind of bed down, it has definitely gotten dark here. Can I get a perception check from you?
22.
22. Okay, yeah, that's really good. It's mostly pretty peaceful up here, actually, for the most part. The wind is not too... It seems to have died down a bit compared to how it was when you were sort of making your first kind of approach. Not gone, it's a little bit sort of... you can definitely hear the sort of howling through the upper valleys and everything. But the little kind of nook that you've set your camp in is fairly, well sheltered. You're about 2/3 of the way through your watch when you suddenly hear... Again, it's sort of off in the distance, but sort of a little bit kind of above you. You just hear sort of kind of like a kind of distant kind of booming thumping.
Okay. Sounds like something big, but it's not close.
It definitely sounds like it's coming from the mountain, if that makes sense.
I'm gonna wait a little while, just keep an eye on it.
Okay. The sound it does continue for maybe 10-15 minutes and then sort of seems to sort of fade away. You're left again in the kind of sort of peaceful silence.
Ooh, relief. Not coming any closer. That's okay. Okay. I'll just wait till it's time to wake up Ruby, and then...
Okay.
I'll relay all that information. I don't know what it was.
How strange. Well, I suppose noises can get amplified in the mountains.
Yeah, that's why I kind of waited. I didn't want to, wake everybody just in case it was just the wind.
I'll keep an
rock
ear out.
falls.
It was kind of a fairly regular sort of boom sort of thing. It wasn't like a kind of occasional kind of bang or anything like that. Sorry, I should have said that at the time.
That's fine. Alright, well, anything goes. Just let me know and have a good watch.
Get your sleep now.
I can imagine
That's
Meg could just
solid
fall
sleep
asleep at
sounds,
the drop of the hat. I can imagine she can just drop a hat.
Okay. Alright, Ruby, can I get a perception check from you then, please? Okay, 12. You don't hear a lot throughout your shift. You do think you kind of hear at one point what might be something similar to what Meg had described for you, but it's it's too distant to tell if it is that, really. The kind of, like I say, at the distant sort of boom, but you just hear it the one time, and most of your shift is spent pretty much in silence, although the wind is starting to pick up now, and it's kind of in the middle of the night sort of thing, and you can definitely you're noticing that even in the kind of little hollow that you're in, it's sort of whipping around, like, not sheets and things, but you know what I mean, there's stuff's rattling about a little bit.
So the winter weather, the nighttime weather here is quite harsh.
It seems to have picked up. I don't want to sort of say, like, at night it's awful and in the day it's bad, but it's definitely sort of picking up a bit this evening, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So Ruby makes a mental note to try to make sure you can find somewhere really secluded for cats at night if we can.
Yeah, you need it to be not too exposed, probably. I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Midsummer or not, it gets cold in the mountains.
Yeah, I'd say you're pretty high up. During the day you're going to have a decent amount of sun probably, but just the altitude. But as I say, the rest of your watch kind of passes pretty uneventfully. It's still pretty windy when you go to wake up Jackson.
So as I shake him awake.
Bit fresh. What?
Yes, it's got a lot colder overnight. So Meg heard something on her shift. Fairly quiet on mine. It could just be noise rattling through the mountain range.
What kind of noise? You see his eyes have gone a little wide, and he hasn't got dark vision, and pretty much the only light is from the fire, so you see him kind of just looking off into the darkness and that, looking not like scared, but a little wary.
Oh, there's nothing close. There's nothing. This is far distant from what Meg said. Far enough it probably would not have been able to get close to here, even if it knew we were here, so...
let's hope so.
Well, if you've any trouble, wake us up. And I'll see you in the morning.
See you in the morning. Yes. You're able to kind of get your head down, and aided by the wind, Jackson seems to be sort of very quiet. Well, you don't hear him sort of rattling around or anything, as Meg did the other day. And you sleep finds you. The pair of you are woken by the rising of the sun. As you awake, you can see Jackson there. He's not asleep, but he's definitely he's sort of sat there, and he's sort of leaning. He's got his sort of walking stick kind of thing out, and he's sort of leaning on it, but his head is sort of nodding as if he was just sort of about to doze, if that makes sense. But the wind has kind of calmed down a little bit, and he's just sort of, it's like his head's sort of going, if that makes sense. He might be dozing, he might be just sort of resting his eyes, you can't tell, but the sun is up and you are awake.
I think we might exchange glances. And then...
I'm just gonna roll my eyes. Oh, for God's sake.
Okay, Ruby will start breakfast, and Jason can be disturbed, and then just sit down, rest.
Good morning. Yes. Right. That time already. Happy to report nothing in the night.
Good. We'll get a brew on. I'll wake you up.
I wasn't sleeping. I was keeping a sharp eye on these cliffs.
Oh?
Who knows what's waiting in the darkness for us?
Your diligence is admirable.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. I was trying my best. Breakfast was mentioned, was it?
Yes. Well, building the fire back up so we can have a good hot breakfast.
Ah, good. Yes. So, I'm not going to make you roll for breakfast or anything. Make a breakfast check for me. So, over the course, I don't know, how long do you say? Quick breakfast, or are you taking your time to make sure everything's sort of...
Probably like an hour. Yeah.
Yeah.
For an early set-off.
Just an hour or something like that.
Okay. 45 minutes to an hour, you have a breakfast, you check all your packs and everything, make sure everything is where it's easy to get to and things like that, the way that you think it would be most useful for the climb ahead. And leaving your campsite behind, the three of you begin your climb of the mountain. The first thing that strikes you when you get out of the little sort of hollow is that it is kind of cold, and that's only going to get worse the higher up you go. It is it's turned into kind of a cloudless morning, so the heat of the fire is sort of long behind you as you're sort of trudging up the hill to begin with. But the way that where the sun's come up, you're kind of in the shadow of the mountain on this side of it. You're on the western side of it, so the sky might be light, but you are still in the kind of cold shadow. So starting the climb, can I get athletics checks from each of you?
20
for Meg, and 24 again for Ruby. So yeah, both of you straight off, no problems at all climbing up this hill. I should probably roll one for Jackson to see how he's getting on. 21. Okay, yeah, so all three of you, early, easy sort of start. You're taking the slightly easier route, as I said, as you decided. And, you feel like you're making good progress for the first hour or so. No signs around you of any kind of wildlife or anything as far as you can see, and after about an hour, you begin to get towards the edge of what you consider like the sort of vegetation line, and that the sort of signs of you're already past the sort of tree line, but the signs of kind of grasses and things are sort of starting to fade away. But one thing you do notice up ahead as you kind of crest kind of the top of the sort of ridge line that you'd been following upwards onto like a little bit of a kind of slightly flatter section is what looks to be a carved stone of some sort sitting on the ridge line. It's about 8 feet tall.
Ooh.
Looks to be there's it's quite neat, finely carved. There's kind of a series of there's kind of I don't want to say there's a logo carved into it, but it's kind of a logo, and there's text of some sort carved into the side of it.
Ooh. What language is the text in?
The text, do either of you speak Draconic?
No.
Well, you don't know what the text says then.
I have to confess, I forgot to put languages in, but I don't think she would have Draconic.
It doesn't really fit with her deal. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Jackson is standing in front of it looking up, and he says, well, he kind of points at the logo thing. He says, well, I haven't got the foggiest what any of this says, but that appears to be the crest of the Dragon Slayers at the top there.
Oh. I wonder who... So they might have built it then?
Well, yes, that stands to reason. If they've left it here for some reason.
Would we recognise that the writing was in Draconic?
Good question. Even if you can't read it, would you recognise the language? I guess just make a straight intelligence check for me. See if see if it's something that you could. I won't. I'm not going to say you'll be able to figure out what it says, but you might recognise the language. Oh, at 20. Yeah. You've definitely seen this written somewhere before, but you've just never sat down and learned Draconic. It's quite it's a little bit of a rare language in these parts. I know you'd said that Ruby wasn't from around here, but just in general, it's not a very common language. You don't have to recognise the script, but you can't translate it.
Well, it's definitely written in Draconic. No idea what it says, but yeah. Interesting.
Hey, it might just be we've been here. Don't worry about the mountain.
That would be, yes. Well, do you think that's the kind of thing they'd leave behind? Like don't worry about it, we killed all the dragons sort of thing?
In my experience, most people leave things to warn people not to touch anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but they might have been warning people that they consider this mountain to belong to them. But if they've not been here for 200 years, then
it's up for grabs.
It's up for grabs.
Come on, let's go plant your flag.
I will say, actually, with that 20 on the intelligence check, there are 4 of the characters on it that look like numbers. You've definitely seen them written down in like a number form.
Okay.
They're all one after another.
That's interesting. Might be a date or a year. Could I copy down those 4 symbols?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Write them on. I will scribble it down and then put it into a pocket. Tuck it deep into a pocket. Keep it safe while we climb.
So while you're writing this down, you do see Jackson as well making a note of the... he's kind of doing his best to scribble down everything in like the kind of way like... he's kind of drawing it as if he's on a piece of paper, as if he was drawing like a thing rather than writing down letters, because he's trying to get the exact shapes in. If that makes sense, even though he can't read them himself. So, there we go. You see him tuck it away as well. Yes, I will get this translated when we get back to civilization. Sure, it's worth keeping a record of. There's a landmark. This wasn't on the map at all or anything, so it's a new landmark. Yes.
Well, the map was kind of fuzzy as we went, as the higher you go. So I'm not surprised it wasn't on the map.
Well, quite, yes. Well, the next map will be less fuzzy. This is it's all rather marvellous. Okay, so moving on. Can I get athletics checks again from the pair of you?
6.
6? Okay. Not so great. And 22. Okay, so 22 from Ruby. Ruby, again, you're not having much trouble on this next bit. It is, shall we say now, you've kind of moved past the stone. Things are getting a little bit steeper. Meg, you're having some difficulties. I'm going to roll for Jackson.
The hangover's kicked in.
Okay, so we just... Jackson also seems to be having some difficulties as well with the 8 that I rolled for him. Would you say Meg had a couple of swigs of the BB with her dinner last night as well?
Or maybe not enough.
Maybe not enough.
She's not had enough.
She's falling out of tipsiness into middle of the morning hangover.
It's tax day.
Yeah.
She has to focus on tax day.
But yeah, you're definitely, I'd say you and Jackson, Ruby's fine, you're not having any trouble. This is just this is a fun walk in the mountains for you. Meg, you and Jackson definitely you're getting a little bit out of breath on this next sort of this next section. It takes you longer to kind of scrabble your way up the slope, which is definitely there's loose more kind of loose scree gravel and things covering the surface, and as you a couple of times put your kind of foot in wrong places, it's you just scrape down and you just catch yourself at the last second, and but you don't fall just yet. I shouldn't say just yet. Sort of implies you're about to fall. But yeah, it's a bit tricky going for a bit. Can I get a perception check from anybody who wants to do one? 5 from Ruby.
22 from me.
22 from Meg. Okay, so you're not doing well on the climbing front, but your ears are still as sharp as ever, and as you're kind of climbing up this last stretch of slope, you see Ruby up ahead of you, striding confidently up. You begin to hear what sounds almost like the booming that you heard the previous evening, coming from up over the next rise.
I'm gonna shout out to Ruby. It's the noise again that I heard last night. Stop! Listen.
It's quite a a lot closer at this point. It definitely sounds like just over the next rise there is something making this kind of rhythmic, fairly regular booming, kind of like a low kind of cracking booming, like it sounds like something big smashing together.
Ooh. Ruby stopped and kind of freezes in place, looks round back at the other two. I don't like the sound of that noise.
Meg shakes her head and is like, no, neither do I. Maybe we get to the ridge and look over before we head over properly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sneak up at the end.
Okay, alright. So trying to be stealthy as you come up to the ridge then?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get stealth checks? So 8
7
from Ruby, 7 from Meg, 14 from Jackson. So yeah, Meg, your climbing proficiency definitely not helping at this point as more gravel comes loose. Ruby as well, you don't fare much better, but the three of you just kind of quite clumsily kind of claw your way up to the ridge and just peek over. It appears that the noise you're making, I wouldn't say it's disturbed what you see, but the rhythmic thumping kind of just stops for a moment after you kind of make the worst of your noise, let's say. And just peeking over, you can see at the top of this ridge there's kind of a little bit of a a little bit of a plateau, a little bit of a kind of shelf on the kind of mountainside. Not very wide, probably about 30 feet wide, from the ridge edge to back to a kind of more not fully vertical, but back against the mountainside. But sitting kind of halfway along it, maybe about 50, 60 feet along, is sat with a fairly substantially sized boulder in one hand and another boulder in the other hand, appearing to be in the process of just aimlessly smashing these two together, is a quite large giant.
I'm going to duck behind the ridge again.
Okay.
Okay, how the hell are we going to deal with this?
You put it maybe 20 feet tall, with a dark kind of slate grey skin. Not too kind of like sort of chunky looking. You know, you've seen in your time, you've seen kind of hill giants which have sort of grown kind of fat on the sort of picking off sheep and things from herds. This one, it's fairly well kind of muscled, fairly sort of lean, and is wearing a sort of kind of loincloth type thing. As I say, it's just kind of sort of sat against the side of the ridge, sort of smashing these two rocks together. And you can see there is a club sort of leant up against the ridge next to it.
And there isn't any way we can sneak past.
Well, here's the thing. You could potentially try and sort of edge slightly along the ridge that you're kind of cresting and climb up the steeper bit. This would involve, if successful, climbing past the giant but kind of above him and hoping that he doesn't notice you. You could sneak past that way.
I mean, giants aren't always the smartest.
No. And even if he did hear us, he's not going to be able to get us anytime. He's going to have to probably come the way that we've gone to get to us. I'm assuming.
I don't know. If he throws that club.
Yeah, that's true.
Or the rocks.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's that, or we try a different approach.
The odds aren't good either way, are they? 3 on a giant versus sneaking past. I say sneaking's the better way.
I think we have to try.
Oh, whatever you think is best. He does look pretty formidable.
If it comes to it, we can try and trick him.
What is that sort of a riddle of some sort? What did you have in mind?
I mean, possibly. Or maybe tell him that some warriors with big swords were chasing us, but they're also coming up, and they will kill him if they find him, so maybe he should ambush them to begin with.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's very devious. Yes. If you think he'll fall for that sounds like quite a... Well, I want a story to tell once we're out of all of this.
Well, let's hope we don't need to use any story. Let's go.
Alright, well, yes. Lead the way. So, as I said, you can kind of sort of sneak your way a little bit along. There is a small kind of... there's a slight kind of crevice. It's not like... not wide enough that you can kind of go along it, but it's kind of enough of a kind of gap between the rocks that you can just sort of use it to climb your way upwards to kind of get onto the narrow sort of I keep using the word ridge line, but there's probably some kind of the narrow sort of ledge, there we go, ledge, to get aboard the sort of narrow ledge way, which is a sort of going along the same ridge line but about you'd put this giant about 20 feet tall. The ridge is probably going along maybe 15 feet above his head if he was stood up, if that makes sense. The ledge is maybe only a foot wide. So it'd be quite... If you get onto it, you'd have to kind of hand over hand be holding onto the mountainside as you kind of shuffle along, but you might be able to sneak past that way.
Right.
Are we ready?
Let's try it.
Okay.
Okay,
so step 1.
Do we want to rope ourselves together?
Yes, definitely.
Thought that.
Alright. Okay, so I know you've got rope. Everybody's got rope, let's just say. It's in the standard
The
pack.
one thing we all knew to bring.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even Jackson brought rope. So, roping yourself together, I guess in kind of silence a little bit. You're trying to, as I say, he's kind of about 50-60 feet along the ridge, along the kind of shelf from you. Can we start things off by getting an athletics check for this first little bit of sort of climbing?
11.
21 from Jackson. 25. Okay, that's pretty good. So 25 from Ruby, 11 from Meg, 21 from Jackson. So yeah, between the three of you, I mean, Meg, you're I don't know, for some reason finding it a little bit tricky, some of these climbing bits. But Ruby and Jackson, the pair managed to sort of help you up onto this crevice, which is again 35 feet from the ridgeline upwards. So you're kind of a little ways up now, and you can see this sort of snaking round the side of the mountain, going over the head of the sat down giant, who has resumed kind of knocking these rocks together. Kind of, you're not seeing why he's doing it. He's just amusing himself. Kind of rhythmic way. This might be his primitive attempt at sort of making some kind of music. He's the Ringo Starr of this mountain. In that there's another giant round the corner who plays guitar but was also a better drummer than him. So yeah, you're now on a sort of just 1 foot wide kind of ledge that is snaking its way above him. So I'll say at this point, with those same athletics checks, you're able to kind of hang on, if that makes sense. But now we need to roll some stealth checks to see if you can sneak past him.
Oh God.
Oof. Natural one from Ruby.
Wow.
A 6 from Meg, and yeah, okay, I got a 19 from Jackson. Okay, so Jackson himself is fairly stealthy. We probably should have decided on an order, actually, shouldn't we, that we were going along. Who's leading the way?
I think that Ruby's probably leading the way.
And I'm probably taking up the end.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're Jackson in the middle. All right,
Yeah.
So you're creeping along, and you make it pretty close to the giant, and Ruby, you slip on a moss-covered section of the ledge and lose your footing.
Oh, and quickly shut myself up.
So you're scrambling to hold on to the ledge. I'd say you fall a couple of feet, and actually, can I get a dexterity saving throw from you? See if you catch yourself. 11. Okay, yeah, not too bad. So you find yourself falling. you're starting to pull Jackson down with you, but you just managed to get one hand out and catch yourself on the ledge. But the moss-covered rock that you kind of slipped on, and some other bits and pieces, fall and land on the giant's head. Who kind of, you can't see his expression from the angle that you're at, but you definitely hear like a, and he's kind of looking around to see where it came from, and he looks up to see a dangling tiefling about 15 feet above his head, and he lets out a sort of roar and kind of pulls himself to his feet, dropping the rocks he was holding and using the club as a kind of crutch just to stand up.
I thought he was going to use it and make her like a piñata.
Well, let's get to that. So, what would you like to do? This giant is now looking up at you.
Let's try and pull Ruby back up.
Okay, alright.
That'd be fantastic.
Strength, I'm assuming?
Yeah. Can I get I guess this would be athletics.
13.
13? Okay, I'm assuming you're kind of trying to pull yourself up as well, Ruby?
Yeah.
Okay, can I get an athletics check from you, obviously, between the two of you? I think actually 13 will probably do it. 18, yeah, okay. So 18 from Ruby. Between the two of you, and let's just say Jackson's helping as well, because the order that we were in. We managed to pull Ruby back up on the ledge, but the giant is now very much aware of the three small people, from his point of view, trying to sneak past him and apparently dropping rocks on his head as they're passing. And
we gotta go.
Okay, so are you running? What's the plan? What are you thinking?
Trying to scramble through as quickly but safely as possible, I think.
Okay.
Ruby, go!
I have an idea.
Okay.
I darkness.
You totally can.
Centered on the giant.
Yeah, no, you can totally do that. Yeah, no, you just do it. Don't need to roll anything. It's concentration,
Nice.
so yeah. Just as the giant is sort of, you're pulled up onto the ledge. Giant lets out another sort of massive roar and goes to raise his club. Is it verbal and somatic, wasn't it?
Verbal and material.
Verbal and material. Bat fur and a drop of pitch, a piece of coal. We haven't really been doing material stuff so much.
Pitch or coal I've definitely got, so
Yeah.
I've got torches and stuff.
Okay, so thinking quickly, you just pull out a pinch of that and speak the words of the darkness spell, and this globe of darkness just sort of like out from his head, and it doesn't block sound at all or anything, but there's just this 15-foot radius globe of darkness sort of centered on his head, and you can see his sort of like his lower body, his feet are kind of kicking around his inside as he's clearly very, very confused by this, and he's waving his arms around like the club is sort of waving, but he can't see you right now. So, what's the plan?
I've got in my head is, who turned out the lights? Who turned out the lights?
But he is shouting the giant equivalent of like, who turned out the lights? But he doesn't speak common, so I'm taking neither of you speak giant either. So
no,
you're just hearing kind of roaring.
Common dwarvish.
You're just hearing kind of like roaring sound, but he's basically for listeners, he's going like, "Oh God, oh no, I'm blind! What's happening? Help!
Is there anybody there?
The sun is gone! Help! The time of eternal night is upon us."
Yeah.
But to you guys, it just sounds like as this club is just sort of waving around, and he hasn't thought to like step forward or anything. He's just kind of in place, like because he doesn't want to step off the cliff. Like, he's not a complete idiot.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, what would you like to do?
I'm gonna ask Ruby how long that's gonna last.
Well, as long as I don't fall, we've got about 10 minutes.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So, I think I'm going to need another athletics check at this point, having neatly sidestepped, just to stay on the little ledge, if that makes sense, because you kind of had to sort of pull yourself up and that. 20 from Meg, 18 from Ruby, that's pretty good. I'll do Jackson anyway. Okay, well, yeah.
Oh no.
Got a natural 1 from Jackson there, but so you're going along you managed to sort of get about 20-30 feet along the ledge, and Jackson again slips on another little kind of like slightly kind of damp piece of rock, and you can see him just about to sort of just tumble over the edge. I'll give you a chance to respond.
Fast hand.
Try and grab him.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because the pair of you are tied to him as well.
Yeah.
So
Grab one from him, try and pull him back up.
okay. Can I guess a dex saving throw, because you're trying to very quickly go whoop, and just sort of grab him. Yeah. 18 and natural 20. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you see him slip. He's behind you, Ruby. But Meg, you kind of just grab the rope. He actually, as he slips, goes whoop, and Ruby, you just kind of shoot an arm out, and he kind of falls on your arm rather than going as Meg, you're kind of holding onto him from behind by the rope. He's sort of like, he's nodded. Oh, I thought that could have been the end of me. Oh, well, onwards. Behind you, you can still hear the roaring of the giant, and the three of you make it around the corner and back onto the trail, leaving you can still hear him, you still hear the roaring of the giant, but like out of sight. The roaring dies down after a little bit. You guess maybe he's sort of taken a step and realised that the darkness is not there. but he's maybe not smart enough to come to realise that you've gone that way. he sort of thought that you've disappeared completely off of the side of this mountain because you were above you. You were above him and everything. So congratulations on neatly sidestepping the giant encounter that I had planned. No, it's fine. It's fine. That was smart thinking. Okay, that's going to do it for this episode. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time on Thursday the 11th of June with the conclusion of this story, and we hope you'll join us for that. In the meantime, you can get in contact with us on Twitter and Facebook, both of which we're at Pretend With Dice. If you're a Discord user, you can also join our server by following the Discord link in our Twitter bio, and finally, you can email us at pretendingwithdice@outlook.com. If you're an iTunes or Apple Podcast user, or indeed a user of any app that lets you leave reviews, it'd be really great if you could leave us a rating and review. It all helps us to find new listeners, and we'd love to hear what you all think of the podcast. So for now, that's our show. I hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.